Internet, sorry for the delay there. I know we're a few minutes late, but one of these fine gentlemen had to pee. Which one? You'll find out momentarily. It's Clay Travis and Buck Sexton of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show. Guys, we're live streaming. I've got tequila here. We were going to try to. I know you wanted the Bud Light. You wanted the Bud Light.
I feel it suits me, my personality perfectly. Did you see the statement that the Bud Light CEO put out literally like 10 minutes ago?
You tell me the statement.
It is the most bland. I read it to Buck as we were rushing over here. It is the most, we acknowledge that we have screwed up on an epic level, but we're just going to try to put every buzzword we can think of into a statement on Friday afternoon to try to put this thing to bed, and I don't think it's going to work. Because I'm curious on your, Buck and I have been talking about this, but there are, by the way, thank you.
Yeah, here you go. Cheers, guys. Good to see you. We are doing.
Congratulations, you made it to Friday afternoon, everybody.
You go. It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
There you go.
That is, let me just say, that is Gran Coramino. I just picked it up. I've never had this before.
We were drinking Casa Dragones last night, which I'm just going to throw out there is our preferred
Do you know that tequila?
I love Casa.
Our boss is the founder.
Is that right?
Yeah, Bob Pittman, the owner of iHeart, that is his tequila.
So, wait, were you drinking the Hoven?
I almost,
yeah. That's what we had last night.
I almost want to be like the guy in Jerry Maguire who's like, I'm sorry, little man, I can't sign those cards.
I'll tell you this.
Ask Phoenix, they had the Hoven at the place.
I will tell you.
It's like $3.50 a bottle.
I will tell you.
I'm not running the money.
Well, when you own the company, I think, but the waiter came and he was like, trying to explain the different flavors.
It was funny.
And I said, yeah, he owns the company. Yeah. So just whatever he says,
and of course the waiter was like kind of like, haha. Then we're like, no, like actually
legitimately owns the company.
So
that is a baller move to own your own tequila company.
I never, I thought I was a tequila drinker. I never had Hoven before, which is a blend between some añejo and another. It's almost like the way they blend wines. I didn't know that. So that was a new exciting thing for us last night.
Casa Dragones.
Yeah, it's pretty badass. But so with the Bud Light thing, we've been talking about it certainly all week. To me, what has kind of opened a lot of people's eyes is there are a ton of men who identify as women that are famous, right, in the trans community.
Yeah.
There is virtually no one who is a woman who identifies as a man. And so what I think a lot of people have started to ask the question of is, why is that? And how did it become so commonplace and acceptable for instance, a man who identifies as a woman to be in charge of selling Nike sports bras, which really is insulting to women in many respects.
And yet, if Clay and I were hired to sell lingerie, for example, people would say like, oh, maybe work out more, get a tan or something. And it's like, excuse me, how about some body positivity for the radio hosts out here? You know what I mean?
No doubt.
Do you guys find, because you're doing a daily thing like me, and every morning I'm going through the stories, and it's just more of this trans BS, and I don't care. I truly, as an adult, live however you want to live, wear whatever you want to wear.
But see, we talk about this, because some of the audience will come at us with this, and what we always say is, you don't understand. They, the left, cares about this so much. We're not focusing on this. This isn't, they say about AOC, for example. They say, like, why does everyone on the right give her so much attention and everything else? And, like, I think she's one member of Congress. She has a big social media footprint. But we like to talk about AOC in general.
It
makes for good. Or we were sad. The View hasn't said anything really dumb in, like, a week.
We didn't cover the
View.
And
we're like, excuse me.
They haven't said anything.
We have needs here. We need the View to say something historically, illiterate or absurd. But the left, they're passing these laws. We talked about one today. They're passing laws at the state level that are going to shield is what they're calling it, but effectively prevent kids from having their parents notified if they run away from home, say they are transgender and want to have transgender affirmation. In Washington now, they're about to sign it. So if your 16-year-old, your 14-year-old runs away from home, obviously having mental health issues and problems to begin with, and says that he or she is trans, the state doesn't notify the parents.
Psychotic. So I can say without equivocation, that's absolutely psychotic. What Florida is now passing this thing that if you are a doctor that does this to underage
it should
kids, you're going to lose your medical license. I am completely fine with that, 100%. I get that thing. Like, I mean it on a personal note. If you're over 18 and you want to wear whatever you want to wear, and I suppose over 18, look, you want to do whatever you want to do with your body, like, go ahead.
But that's kind of been the way it is for a long time, right? The new stuff is
really, it's about kids.
The new stuff is the kids, the sports competition, it's the they have pushed this into this new realm, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really no longer about politeness. It started with sort of the pronoun stuff, and that became fashionable, but this has really been rolled out as a campaign.
Well, do you think that because of the way now, especially with this Riley, what's her name?
Riley Gaines,
Riley
who
Gaines
is doing phenomenal work.
Incredible stuff, but do you think now it's like so freaking obvious how evil they've become?
Yeah,
that
I think
maybe
so.
It'll turn the sports people.
What I would hear for a long time, because I saw this coming, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember? And we've talked about this on the show this week. But do you remember when John McEnroe got crushed for saying that Serena Williams would be like the 700th best men's tennis player?
Which she said herself on Letterman like a decade ago.
And probably would be like the 70,000th best, right? Like there's a big difference between elite tennis players, male versus female.
She actually went as far to say it was a different sport altogether. She said male tennis and female tennis are different sports.
So they started arguing, that was the beginning of this, that there's not really very much difference between men and women when it comes to athletic performance, which is laughably absurd. And then they started saying, well, it's not going to be a very big deal. Why do you care if a man identifies as a woman? And I think the Leah Thomas situation, and we were actually talking about this in the car, when Will Thomas decides to become Leah Thomas and wins an NCAA championship, and Riley Gaines swam against the Leah Thomas, and you see them standing side by side, and you've got like a 5'8" woman, which is a tall woman, next to a 6'3" man, biologically, with monster hands, monster feet. Like, these are not similar-sized athletes.
Still has a penis.
Correct. And was able to use the women's locker room, and the women were just supposed to treat that as if it were normal. Yeah. That's where it moves.
Sorry to interrupt, but you want to know my director, Connor, his theory on the penis, why he kept the penis? He's using it as a propeller. I don't know if that's it.
Well, you could actually argue that the aerodynamics of this go against him in that one area.
I'm not a scientist.
I'm just saying, I know about drag, a different kind of drag, but like the drag in water.
Oh, that's good.
Thank you.
I did a joke, and I deleted it, but I was like, when Leah Thomas won the 500 meter, I was like, celebrates by twirling penis like a windmill. Like imagine, you know, like just get the little helicopter.
We do
going.
A show together. I love it. He still says things on a regular basis. I'm like, oh my God, can we say that? And Clay
first off,
does not care.
You realize how stupid Twitter has become, that you had to delete that tweet, but now you can just announce the tweet right here. Like, that's how dumb
I'm disappointed in myself, because sometimes, you know, like you're driving in a car and you're like, you know, celebrates by twirling his penis like a helicopter. And I was like, you know, I'll delete this just because I don't want to create a huge stir if I'm about to go to dinner. Yeah. Right? Like, I'm like, it's Friday, I'm going to go to dinner, and maybe they'll clip this and it'll be a huge stir. But like, if you have a penis and you're in the women's locker room, for almost all of recorded human history, you would be arrested. Right? And now it's supposed to be celebrated. And so I think to the point here, we've moved from let's be tolerant to we're now going to exclude women from actually being able to be involved in women's athletics.
On the tweet before dinner or tweet vacation thing.
Oh yeah, this happened to Buck.
So I was visiting my now wife, then fiance, or actually no, it wasn't my fiance yet, but I was visiting her in Asheville, North Carolina, which I'd never been to before. And you ever been to Asheville, North Carolina?
I think
it's a fun spot.
Maybe I did a show there with Jordan.
You ever been to Northampton, Massachusetts?
Yeah, no.
Oh, okay. No. Well, I'm trying to. These are like
I don't leave Florida anymore, and I have no recollection of my life
apparently
before
not.
Florida.
Look at this.
So it's
New York City,
young
LA,
I was
Florida.
in Fort Lauderdale last week.
But if you took like Berkeley, California, if you took Berkeley and you put it in, you know, the mountains of the Carolinas, essentially, you'd have Asheville. And I was like, oh man, I wasn't even trying to start
Memorial Day weekend.
It was Memorial Day weekend. Oh no, 4th of July weekend.
4th of July weekend.
4th of July weekend. And I'm always like, don't tweet on vacation, don't tweet on vacation. Because, you know, the swarms of lunatics come after you, and then, you know, you're not paying attention to the beautiful sunset and the meal and everyone else. You're like, oh, like I'm gonna crush you, like you get all crazy. I just said I said this is kind of surprising, something like that. There are more people wearing masks here than in New York City. And this is like summer 20, this is this past summer, this past 4th of July. I was like, look, I'm a little surprised by this. So they went wild over
I got
this.
my phone out. He was the #1 trending subject in America. I was like, what did he do? I was on the beach just hanging out.
I'm trying to hang out with my future in-laws and just be like a cool guy. My phone's getting blown up, and it was the Charlotte Observer wrote a news article about it, like right-wing radio host sneers at Asheville. Like, it went all crazy. I'm sitting there like...
Why? Oh, because it's crazy blue there, and
they were
even
all...
last summer.
They had masks required in a lot of stores. They had all the clerks in all the stores, all the employees, N95 masks, every single one of them. It is 80 degrees outside, the summer of 2022, and they're all wearing N95, and a lot of them were double mask. Anyway, so don't. It's like don't drink and drive. don't tweet and vacation, because you never know when something's going to. Whenever you do something you think is just sort of you can chill out, is when actually everyone comes after you and
I'll also say that's totally true, and I feel like almost nothing lasts. We were talking about this on the show during one of the commercial breaks. Trump got arrested and had to be arraigned on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And I feel like that story is completely gone now.
A
week later, it's like nobody even cares that this had never happened in the 240-year history of our country.
Do you guys,
and it's crazy how quickly the news cycle moves.
Do you ever feel that we're just basically in like the show must go on version of democracy at this point?
This is like a simulation or something?
Yeah,
Someone else is
it's just
watching
the
it?
show. So it's like, you're right. It literally happened a week ago. People go crazy for 3 days. Then we're talking about trans, this, the other thing. And then they boot the next hearing to December. So it's like, oh, they're just telling us season 2 is coming, so let's just keep playing.
I think we're in a world now where, and Trump, the whole Trump era made this much more apparent. You never are punished for the wildest exaggeration as long as it got clicks and served your team, right? So there's nothing you can say that is too crazy as long as it is within the ideology that you support, meaning for people on the left, this anti-Trump stuff. I mean, take examples of this, like there are people who are not only gainfully employed, but after all the Russia stuff, they are more famous, more and you've had guys who have come out and said that the January 6th riot was worse than 9/11, worse than Pearl Harbor.
Yep.
That's the kind of thing that in a sane world, people be like, that person should never be on my show. TV, no one should listen to him. I think we should do a wellness check on him. And instead, they're like, oh, we need to make this guy a contributor.
So what do we do about those people? Because you guys are doing a similar thing on a daily basis as me, and I'm playing the clips from The View and all the stupid shit on MSNBC and the liars on CNN. And yes, we do it every week. I can do it. They lied about this, they lied about that, Maddow and masks, like just everything that they do. But they don't get fired, and they don't go away, and they do get promoted, and they end up working at the White House and everything. Like, should we be ignoring them at some level? Like,
I think it's such a good question, and my theory is the news cycle moves so fast that there's no reckoning. And COVID is a perfect example. We keep hammering on this. Not one Democrat mayor or elected statewide official lost his or her job getting everything wrong about COVID for multiple years.
Cuomo lost his job for grabbing some woman across the belly or the tummy like years ago, but shoving elderly people by fiat into nursing homes full of COVID and calling for 1 million ventilators gets a $5 million book advance. I mean, in some ways, that's actually the most perfect encapsulation of what we're seeing.
Like, that's the most, obviously. But the idea that someone voted for Gretchen Whitmer after she
won comfortably.
Yeah, but after she literally told people, do not go outside and garden. I sent from crazy LA, I sent people seeds in the mail, fans, I kid you not, to Michigan because they couldn't.
Were they certified non-GMO? Not Monsanto? Not Monsanto.
They blocked off your ability to go into stores in Michigan and what you could buy, and there were no consequences. And so this kind of goes to larger context. I feel like so many people have made up their mind that it's almost impossible to get anything to occur to get people to change their minds.
We've been, there's the stuff where we make fun of The View and it's great fun and they deserve it. And The View, those ladies are all making millions of dollars to be idiots and they think they're great and they go to the cocktail parties in the Upper West Side and that's all fair. And then there are the things we talk about sometimes where there's just a bit of shock and there's sadness at how this is going to play out, right?
Yeah.
And what just happened in Chicago, for example, I mean, you and I, you grew up in New York City too, right? You were there in the 90s. You remember, I was told as a kid growing up in New York City by my school, my little Catholic school, to take off my jacket and my tie every day so that it was less likely that I would be beaten and mugged. They would send that letter. That's how common it was. And this is a real thing in New York City. We had to have a security guard on the block where I went to school because so many kids had knives pulled out and put up to their throat and their wallets were being taken. Like New York in 1991, 90, that was Upper East Side.
Upper East,
East Side, which is like the
George
fancy,
Jefferson,
I'm not gonna lie, it's
nice.
the fancy neighborhood, right? But there are neighborhoods that are close by that are not as high income. Anyway. So we've seen what it's like, right? That dystopia, that anarchy. Clay grew up in Nashville. It's amazing, freedom, no taxes. Like everyone's like playing, everyone's shotguns and moonshine. He's having a great time.
Mr.
Country
Miami
music.
over here.
Yeah,
He's
I know.
the one that doesn't live in Florida.
But here's, I told him you only can dress as Crockett from Miami Vice if you're going to come hang out with me.
Yeah, this I got crushed for the drink that I got, and I know I'm going to be getting lit up right now for this shirt. But this is a phenomenal shirt.
Yeah, it is.
Amazing shirt. Amazing shirt.
But so we see these things that sometimes happen, and one of the things that I think we've lost in this, and you used to have some of this on your show in the earlier days when I feel like the left would actually come on and throw down, which is really, I got into this business, I was a CNN contributor for a little while, and I was like, we're going to fight, right? Like this is with ideas, like we're going to fight with ideas, and never happens anymore. There's no debates anymore. Why am I talking about this? One, I think it just makes the media less interesting, but two, Chicago, the mayor's race, what just happened there? That's why I was talking about New York.
Yeah.
The highest crime, most violent parts of the city voted the most overwhelmingly for the guy who is going to make the city probably even less safe than it was under Lori Lightfoot, has all of the wrong ideas, all of the wrong inclinations. I just wish there was someone who could try to represent that side. I would actually like to have a real discussion with them. I'd like to have a real, like, please God, make me understand how you don't see that more people are going to be shot in your city, in your neighborhood, because of this decision that is so obviously bad.
You know, I did Patrick Bet David's live podcast last week.
Yeah, we did it yesterday.
We did it yesterday.
Yeah.
So I was on with Rudy, and it was. And
he was talking about that. You guys got into a debate.
Well, we got into Trump DeSantis stuff, which I want to talk to you guys about. But he said that talking about the crime in New York City. He said, someone came up to me the other day and said, what does it feel like to have your life's work ruined? And the guy was almost crying as he said it. And then Rudy said something to the effect of, I started tearing up. Because his life's work of cleaning up that city that you grew up in, that I remember, I grew up in Long Island, but going into the city where my grandparents lived, before Rudy, when it was Dinkins those years and the end of Koch, it was a freaking disaster and disgusting.
2,200 murders in 1991, by the way. They checked it. They fact-checked that on the show
That's the year before Rudy, right?
That was pre-Rudy. I'm saying that was the high watermark. That was the worst year in the history of the city. Over 2,000 murders.
Right. So he said someone came up to him and said this, and he said it was the first time he really realized. Yeah. Like, holy cow, that place is gone.
Well, you guys on either side. So you're right. Like I'm Nashville, Tennessee, born and raised. I love it. But I think a lot of people who are watching us, listening to us, you are a New York guy. You loved New York City. Yeah. Like you just said, you're born and raised there. You grew up in New York, but then you really liked L.A. I liked for a long time.
6 years were great, and then it just collapsed. L.A. The thing with L.A. was it collapsed overnight. It was not like a slow. Chicago's been like kind of like a slow thing. L.A. was like great, and then COVID.
So I grew up. We talk about this in the show because Clay is a different generation, and so I like asking him about what it was like.
By the way,
I think you're younger than me.
I'm like, Clay, when you were watching
year of Gen X.
What are you?
79.
So when Clay was up,
76.
When he was watching,
82.
When he was watching,
so it's
MASH,
a big deal.
Late at night, when he had his smoking jacket on, he was like Mr. Roper from Three's Company. That was Clay's vibe. But no, obviously we're both kids of the '90s, and we love '90s.
He makes
music.
a big deal about me being a different generation.
What's also fun is some people don't hear the actual age difference. They're just like, you need to stop making fun of Clay for being old. I get an occasional email. I'm like, no, you don't understand the joke. Anyway, what was I even saying about this now? What were we talking about?
Generationally, like the difference of you guys made the decision, and this is what I think is going to echo
LA,
for
but keep
years.
going, LA.
You finally said, I can't do LA.
Yeah.
You finally said, I can't do New York City. You both now are in Florida, and that's happening in Tennessee, that's happening in Texas. I don't think we're going to see the full impact for a decade, but I think it's fundamentally reset the entire fabric of the country.
There's no question.
Are you guys hopeful for the country?
Can I just on the LA thing, and then we come back to hopeful for the country, just because you lived out there. I actually thought about moving out there like maybe 7 years ago, 6, 7 years ago. So I spent some time out there. I grew up in the '90s where, to me, as a New York City kid who loved New York City, LA, the beach, that was like the ultimate promised land. Like, all the Hollywood stuff.
Beverly Hills 90210.
The beautiful women, the surfers. I don't even surf, and I watch Point Break, and I'm like, I want to be a surfer like these cool guys. You
look like
LA,
a surfer.
Well, thank you. I do what I can. Yeah. But you had this sense that LA, and it really was. And what's so interesting is now people say, oh, but all this. Well, if liberal governance is so bad. it became this powerhouse when it was a Republican stronghold, really, and then increasingly with a lot of illegal immigration and a lot of just demographic and other changes in the state of California, it became more and more left wing. And it takes a while. This is the thing about New York. It takes a while when you take over a place, whether it's a company, a home, a car. When you take control, take possession of something that's really nice and fine-tuned and working really, really well, it can sometimes take a while to actually destroy it, right? To show that you're not a good caretaker of this. And that's what I feel like with California now, this notion of that as like the promised land, and all of our TV shows, Beverly Hills 90210, I was a kid, I wanted to date all those girls. Like, this is amazing.
Baywatch, Pamela Anderson,
Baywatch,
everybody remembers.
And now you think of California and you think of like communist teachers unions, Gavin Newsom being a psychopath, and disorder and decay in the streets and tons of traffic. Like, it really has changed the perception.
So now that you're here and you're still in Nashville, should we care at all about California at this point? I keep thinking about that a lot. I mean, Newsom, he just infected our state. He was here for a couple of days, and I truly think he is the embodiment of evil. Like, this guy is bad news. Everything about him, it's a sort of Jordan Peterson version of it, but like, what would ultimate evil be? It would just be the reverse of the truth. And I think this guy is simply incapable of saying anything true.
I think we
should we care about that?
I think we should care, but the problem is, and I think this is what Rudy Giuliani is such a good example of, and Buck's right about Brandon Johnson in Chicago, until people realize that their choices are destroying their communities, nothing is going to change. And I actually think it's more difficult because he left New York City. You left LA.
Right. So it's already.
So you're going to make Florida redder. And Tennessee's getting redder, and Texas is getting redder.
Yep.
And what you're going to have is such a massive cultural conflict, right, between bluer and redder. And at some point, I think that is going to really, if you could set up a perfect red versus blue battle, it should be DeSantis versus Gavin Newsom.
Yeah.
And we should have it
let's
out.
Just
like
do
a
it. Let's
real
just
debate. Like, is California better than Florida,
Yeah.
right? Was the response of Gavin Newsom better during COVID than the response of Florida? Because this is a great stat.
Yep.
DeSantis won Florida by a higher percentage than Newsom won California.
Yeah.
So I think the nation needs to have that battle for there to be a true reckoning. My biggest fear is just there have to be consequences for wrong decisions in a political process. And right now, it seems like we're in a consequence-free environment where, to Buck's point, like, it really doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
And I used to say, on social media, you're trending for some reason, some opinion, whatever. It used to be you had to worry. You just had to wait for somebody to do something dumber or draw more attention from you.
Yeah.
Now it feels like it doesn't even matter what you do. 24 hours later, we wake up with a brand new slate.
Right. There's something refreshing about that in a bizarre sense.
A little bit.
Right?
Now,
To
Bud
some
Light
degree,
managed
right?
to get caught in
I
like
say,
this like can't escape universe, but it requires you repudiating the people who like you for anything to last.
Right.
It's harder now, I think, also for people to be canceled than it was, because I do think attention spans have shifted so rapidly now that that's if there's a silver lining to it, I think it's that you have to do something like really crazy for people to tend to drop you into all those things. Whereas there was a time, people forget, like Brendan Ike, remember that guy who was the Mozilla?
He gave like $50
to the Prop 8 in California.
Yeah.
Same time that Barack Obama is running as a traditional marriage candidate, and then years later they're like, yeah, you're toast, you're out, you're gone. I mean.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff I actually think was happening a little more a few years ago, not because the left hasn't gotten less crazy. I think they're more crazy, but I do think that their ability to both, to Alinsky, right, freeze the target, focus on the target, isolate the target, that's a lot harder for them. And also people realize on the right, there's no apology tour, there's no bend the knee, there's no, hey, can you guys just like let me off this one time? It's extend, Clay Travis style, double birds to the camera and say, this is how we roll. Because if you kneel, they just take your head. Everyone's seen that, I think, enough.
What's the last thing you did that you were like, oh, people really were mad? Like, I can't even remember, and I'm probably jinxing myself. I can't even remember the last time anybody even landed a punch on me over anything. It's been years.
It's been a while. I mean, well,
we
you
first
did the
met.
unthinkable. You said boobs on CNN, and
That's when I did your show for the
wasn't
first
even
time.
a curse word, by the way. That's
No,
what I
but
never even.
what was
I
her
know.
name? Brianna?
No,
no,
Brooke
it's his
Baldwin.
buddy.
I know
Brooke Baldwin. They're
All right,
buddies.
so this is the crazy. This is like, see, if you hang out with
Right,
all
I
of
didn't
us
know-
afterwards, this is where you get the insider stuff.
Yeah.
Brooke
A lot of
Baldwin
tequila in there,
is.
guys.
That's right. Brooke Baldwin is actually not there anymore. One of the cooler CNN
He was like,
hosts.
you guys would really get along.
Like
if you
Harry
met.
Clay.
Wait,
but
have you met her?
No, never met her.
On camera with, Zucker watching from his little office, everything. It was like, it was pearl clutching, everything else. But I'm telling you, if you sat with her now, she'd be like, yeah, like, I probably could have rolled with that one a little bit more.
Well, what's funny is I was on Headline News the day before, and I said the same thing, and the host laughed, right? I mean, because it's clearly not a... Because, again, that's when we first met.
Can you give the 20-second recap
for
of it
people
for
who
someone
do
that
not
might
know, this is like 5 years ago. I went on talking about Jamel Hill at ESPN, and I was defending her free speech rights, and I was saying ESPN shouldn't be firing people for tweets or anything else that's going on, right?
Yeah.
And so and then I went on CNN, and I said, and I've been saying this on my radio show for years, I only believe in two things completely, the First Amendment and boobs, because as a heterosexual man, neither have ever let me down, right? And it's better than saying what I had found, I'm a First Amendment absolutist, because people get hung up on what does that even mean?
Yeah.
And this is a little bit more funnier way of saying that. And she just lost her mind and wanted me to apologize.
Yeah.
And I just doubled down. There's another guy on, and we were talking about this yesterday. It's gone viral on TikTok now, right? Like new generations of kids are finding it because the apology thing of, she immediately tried to get me to apologize. And then it was the #1 trending subject in America.
Right.
And I just leaned right into it.
All you did back then was talk about boobs. Now you got to chop your boobs off to get.
Well, that's how crazy things have gotten.
So
no, really.
Are we circling back to the trans thing for a second? Because there's one thing that I've been saying to Clay since we started the show, and I have in a couple of different, I started. People don't remember this now. I think it's kind of funny. I started the show Rising, which later became, it was with Crystal Ball, who was at MSNBC, and Crystal and I always had a very, I sound like Trump, we had a beautiful relationship, we agreed on everything, beautiful relationship. But no, we always got along, and she's actually, for her point of view, I think she's talented. But she's very left-wing. I don't know if you know her at all. I mean,
not personally.
She's like Bernie Sanders left-wing, right? And now she does that show with Sagar. And then later on, I actually did a podcast with Mark Lamont Hill, who again, great guy. You know Mark at all?
I'm sure he's an incredible
He's
guy.
like a super fun guy to hang out with. Really, he's witty, he's amusing and everything, but also super left-wing politics. But from spending time with them and just sort of hearing also conversations around them with some of their colleagues and other people, you get a sense of what the true left position, because they'll actually get heat on the left from people that think that they're not hardcore enough, right? Or they're not going hard. So I've learned from years of doing that with other hosts what the real, the maximalist position is. So for example, on defund police, it's actually not defund police, as I'm sure you know, it's abolish.
Right.
Abolish police, abolish
That's like
prisons.
the pure.
And they refer to it as an abolition movement, not without obvious connection to the righteousness of the abolition movement of slavery. So that's what the hardcore left wants there. The hardcore left, the true position of the left on transgender issues is not, be nice to people, don't, let people live their life, like the stuff you're saying, right? Like let people be who they are and do their thing. The true position is that these are a transgender man who becomes a woman, right? Whatever, is a woman in every sense, indistinguishable in how she should be not only treated legally, but socially, in athletics, professionally, everything else. It is a woman 100% the same, to the point where, and I've actually posed this to leftists before true leftists, so is a heterosexual male supposed to be attracted to a trans female, or else they're transphobic? They would say that's transphobia. It is a woman indistinguishable from, the mothers that gave us life. A woman 100%. That is the definition of crazy, which is why it's so important to just not only not cede this ground, but to look at the whole argument and where this came from and how this
is that
happened.
the crazy part of the left? And I actually prefer to talk about crazy parts of the right, because we could do this all day long. And it's
Sure,
easy
no,
but
absolutely.
we could shift to that. But is that the crazy part of the left, that there is basically nobody saying no to this stuff? I mean, look, there's Bill Maher, who will always vote Democrat no matter what.
That's right.
I like him.
He's not red-pilled. I like him too.
We've become friends. I'm trying with him so hard, but I know at the end, even if it's DeSantis, and even if Cali goes back into lockdowns, he will still support the Democrat. It's just how it is. you know, I think there's something to be said. If you're a 67-year-old worth $100 million, you can have a set of luxury beliefs where it's because it's not your kids.
Right.
You know, you're not married, you don't have kids, blah, blah, blah. But there's basically nobody on the left saying, like, where is Bill Clinton? Where's a statesman on the left just being like, could we not go completely crazy?
So,
you know?
Go
ahead,
to
Bill.
sports. Where is somebody on ESPN
Yeah.
who will just come out
Right, what an
on their
easier example.
network?
Clay told me this early on. We teamed up, and I'll let go into the sports things more. But just it was so funny because he told me, I was like, dude, how woke is? Because you know I come from the news commentary background and all that stuff straight up, and he comes from the sports background. And I was like, how woke is sports media? And he said more woke and more ardently left wing than journalism, like traditional journalism. And I was like, Clay, that's insane. And it's 100% true. It's 100% true.
And he's seen it because he's not a huge sports guy, but you know, but for Outkick, there is no one out there that would say think about how crazy this is, in all of sports media that would say men should compete against men and women should compete against women. And think about it, on ESPN, they have moved from, okay, we only focus on sports, to they ran during, I think women's, you know, celebration month is now March or whatever. I can't keep up with all the different months, but they ran Leah Thomas is a women's sports champion, 1 minute advertisement basically from ESPN. And so I look at this and there is no one on the air on ESPN that would go on and say this is wrong. Yeah. And so to your point, to me this is emblematic of where we are, that even things that are biological realities, there's hardly anyone that would even make this fight. And I look at it and I say, there's a knife fight for the 25% of woke sports media, and then there's Outkick. And we win, because it's like you're fighting on something that is an objective farce. But I wonder, I think Buck's right. I think in 3 years, if you don't want to bang a chick with a dick, like you're going to be considered transphobic.
Be banged by a chick
or
with a
be
dick.
banged,
That's the next
scarier. That's the next
But
version.
you know, I think I told you this once. I grew up in the same town as Sue Bird.
Well,
so
she's come out with Megan Rapinoe and like.
Right. So she's, I think, how old is she? She's
over 40.
Right. So she's probably about like 7 years younger than me. But I would occasionally play basketball with her at the local parks. I asked at the park. And
you got the moves there, Rubin?
Can you
go left?
You got an outdoor basketball court. I've seen the footage.
You got to come.
I need to see it.
I got a torn ACL on my knee, but I can still shoot. But anyway, I would play with her, with a couple other guys, and she would play with all guys. And she was clearly better than almost everybody. Yeah. But she could never play in the NBA. That's not misogynist to say. It's not anything else. And the fact that she has now come out on the other side
Megan
of this,
Rapinoe.
Yeah. Well, she was long gone from the beginning.
But I mean, they're basically coming out in favor of erasing women's sports. Yeah. Because this circles back around to the Riley Gaines angle. People say, why do you care? Well, the reality is because I believe I care for the same reason that I coach 12-year-old Little League, right? I shouldn't be able to show up with a 16-year-old and run the league, right? Yeah. And everybody would naturally react to that. I care because there are basic rules of allowing fairness and competition.
Here's the problem, though, and the reason. And then I know you want to Trump your standards. By the way, PBD. So it's hard because there's the Presidential Daily Brief, which I used to work for.
Big time dropping.
And then there's the BD, which is Patrick Bet David, right? So I get these switched up. By the way, Clay threw me under the bus yesterday with a little old school reference to my prom date on the PBD show.
You know who you went to prom with?
Who did you go to prom with?
Junior prom, and we're not even bringing this up right now. This is what happened on the PBD show, because that's all they want to talk about then. I'm like, excuse me.
Don't you want to know more about him going to prom with Ivanka?
I have serious political ideas, and instead they're asking me about my 16-year-old.
It's possible that you peaked at 16.
I had dinner with her last week.
I definitely peaked at 16.
Didn't say a word about you.
Didn't say a word about me. I know. It's sad. I'm in the wrong tax bracket, my friend. I had to go into the government service.
She really blew it. She could have been Mrs. Buck Sexton instead. She's married to a billionaire.
It is what it is. So I mean, that was funny though, because I'm on PBD.
Yes.
Yesterday we're talking DeSantis Trump stuff, and I'm like we're trying to really have an in-depth conversation. But that's all that I've heard about so far from people that watch that. So
anyway, of course, I'm sorry for blowing you up in a good way. I mean, nobody's going to be like, oh, you went to prom with Ivanka.
I think I can maybe beat you on.
It was junior prom, by the way. Junior prom.
I know you will know exactly where both of you were on my prom night.
OJ.
My prom night was the night.
I think no, I didn't know. Kidding? I'm just guessing. I'm guessing like
my prom night. I believe it was either June 19th or June 17th, 1994. It was the night of the OJ Simpson car chase, which was also Game 6 of the
Houston Rockets, New York Knicks.
That
He was a big Knicks fan back in the day.
That was the Olajuwon just got the Starks shot that missed it. Then they went to Game 7.
Yeah. I remember that.
So
how the Waldorf Astoria in New York City.
So how did you become aware that the O.J. chase was going on prom night?
Because
They cut to it.
because all of us
he's
were
at
trying.
prom. Oh, he's at
No,
prom,
we
yeah.
were at prom at the Waldorf, but all of us. It was Game 6 of the finals in New York. We
Yep.
were, you know,
So wait,
almost
you were one
everyone
of these
Knicks
Long
fans.
Island kids. You used to be an
So-
interloper in my city with your your neon lights under the car and the whole thing. I remember.
Very fancy,
I know you, Long Island.
very fancy
The
limos.
Bridge and Tuttle Squad.
But
Now I know what's going on.
We were all trying to watch Game 6.
Yep.
So we were all running down to the bar, but they wouldn't let us stay at the bar. But then suddenly the TVs all switched over
Yeah,
to OJ.
yeah, yeah.
And then we were all freaking out because we wanted to go back to Game 6, and legendary evening.
So are we still on the seriousness, the
We're-
metaphysical
we're
reality
wherever we
of
are.
trans?
By the
or
way,
are we
guys,
on
I just want to
DeSantis
say, are
Trump?
we all class here?
I
Look
got
at
a
these
drink.
cups.
I mean,
Look
not
at these
drink.
cups
I
that
got to
we get.
drive, so I can't drink too much of this. I got a drink.
My girl is buying
What is this,
glasses for
clap?
us right
What does
now.
this even
I don't-
say
This
on
was
it?
just from the store next door because we didn't have any cups
Oh,
here.
okay. Yeah, well,
I picked
this
up the
is-
tequila. My girl's at Target right now. She's going to come and bring us glasses.
Dave Rubin, you're a very fashionable man. That's for sure. We know this, right?
Yeah.
You're a man of some style and substance in the
Thank you.
fashion realm.
Thank you, Buck.
We had a woman, I'm going to guess she, based on both her name and the fact that her email was definitely an AOL email, who was one of our esteemed readers, who I think is of the older generation.
Phyllis.
Phyllis.
I mean, if
was
you're
her name.
named Phyllis, you're probably
Phyllis,
not Phyllis.
AOL.
Yeah,
Phyllis,
yeah, yeah.
one of our beloved
Yeah.
one of our beloved VIPs.
Great gal, great gal.
And Phyllis is great. She told me that I absolutely need to shave my beard because I said it on the show. And I've got two bearded gentlemen here. Do you think I could pull it off? This
How
is
long have you had the beard?
Oh my God, 5 years now.
So I'm about 5 years or so into the beard, 6 years. I could never shave it. I'm more beard than man.
You're
at this
more?
point.
Oh, wow.
I'm 21
Okay.
years in on the beard.
Really?
I've had it since 02.
He
But
says
your beard, you keep it tight enough that you almost look like someone that's
Like,
just,
that's a
just
stubble
on
situation.
on
You've
a
got
long
like a
weekend.
I
stubble
keep
thing.
it super close,
Yeah,
like the
yeah, yeah.
old school Wolf Blitzer. Remember Wolf Blitzer? You were always like, "What's going on with the Wolf Blitzer?"
I used to,
beard?
when I was
Like,
doing stand-up, I used to do a joke about if you stare into his beard long enough, you start tripping like you're on mushrooms. Something.
So also, by the way, I have a theory about this that we talked about on the show. I want to throw
what does
this out to
Ivanka
you.
think about the beard?
I haven't heard from her in like 10 years, man.
You should text her and see what she
you know?
thinks about the
I'm gonna
beard.
text her right now.
Yeah.
You should literally text her and be like,
FaceTime her.
I'm on set with Buck
Jared
Sexton, who
Kushner
lives
sat
in
that
Miami.
chair right there,
Fa-
right?
You should
FaceTime
text her and be
her,
like,
see what
I'm
she
here in
thinks.
Miami with Buck, and he's just like, you don't call, you don't write, you know.
I'll tell
It's,
her where we're going tonight.
I'm
We'll
like
see.
I'm
Maybe
like
they'll do-
chopped liver over here. You know
Maybe
what I
they'll do
mean?
a guest appearance. I'll tell her where we're going.
Her
tonight.
dad asked me to be in his cabinet, okay, and she doesn't even text. I'm just
Wow.
saying. Yeah,
This is getting weird.
it's getting weird.
Did you ever date anybody famous?
I don't think so. I'm
I
trying
didn't
to,
date her.
I did
did not date her. That is, see, this is how these things all get crazy.
You
The
went to the
LA
prom with
Times.
her.
That's a date.
the
No,
ultimate
it
date.
was
What
it
do you
was
say?
junior prom, which is more like school formal junior year. Prom is senior year, so it was a different thing.
So you
I
went
just
to the
can't-
same school as her.
No. I invited her.
It's a
in, and,
date.
you know, we knew each
Come
other.
on.
It's a date.
Yeah.
It was a date, but it wasn't. You know, we weren't like going steady or anything. You know, I don't want Jared to like hire the Mossad to take me out or something. You know what I mean? So I'm just trying to.
I don't think so. In
Did you
terms
bang
of,
her?
No, good heavens, sir!
I'm
How
just
could you
asking
even
what the
bring
people
these
want.
things?
I know. I can feel.
How
what the
could you even bring? We were friends.
I'm
you
just
hold
saying, I
hands?
can
We
feel
were
what the-
friends.
I've been
You
doing this a
hold
long
hands?
time. I know what the
I
audience
think
wants.
I got a
hold
high
hands? Did you-
five at the end of the night. I
high
can't
five?
believe you're
Oh,
putting this
man.
on the internet.
Is
Like,
this on the internet? We're
I
doing
get
this on the
it.
internet.
I think that's a fabulous question.
Wait, what happened to our glasses? Oh, we have actual glasses now. We can shift because we're all class here.
But
yes.
I'm trying to think. Have you ever dated anybody famous? You don't have to name them.
I don't think so, actually.
Well, I got married when I was 25, so
There
the
you go.
answer
All
is
class,
100.
all
The
class.
answer is 100% no, because I was only 25 when I got married. Nobody cared about
Thank
me
you.
for years, so I never got to cash in on the buck. I'm a bachelor in New York City for 25 years.
20 some odd years
Yeah.
in New York, let me tell you, I've always thought that it'd be fun to start a podcast, but it would have to be very unfiltered. I mean, it's funny because when we go on podcasts, like he's cursing and dropping F-bombs, but I'm so like in the, I still can't, even on Bill Maher's show, I asked him, I was like, I can really curse
You
here?
can actually
And they
curse.
just started saying things, but I just can't.
Do you guys find it's tough to get out of radio mode? Because you've said that to me a couple of times, where suddenly you're talking to people and you realize you're in like radio guy. Because there is that little. You guys are both the same off camera, but all of us have this little.
There's
like
a performance. There's a
5%
performance
tweak.
quality,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
There's a thing
I
that
think
you do.
the biggest challenge with radio, and we've talked about this, I genuinely don't believe there should be any restrictions on what we say.
Clay's not driving.
So
yeah, I'm the chauffeur, by the way. Unsurprising.
We have Uber in this town. You can leave your car here. We're in a
Do you know that our studio is out? It's like where they have the alligators and the fan boats and stuff. We're way out there.
It's a ways out there.
It's
but
way
I'm just
out
saying,
there.
we can get from the building we are in right now to where we are going this evening without you having to drive.
But my car is outside, so what am I going to do? I'm going to leave it here. This also this
secured
neighborhood. I mean, I live not far, but like it's a little spicy. It's a little spicy around here. Dave Rubin, you got all this locals money. I'm just going to throw this out there. Like,
I don't want my location
you got armed security
Clay,
here.
what were you saying now?
No, I mean, I think it's a good transition.
Thank you.
I have long thought that there should, the idea of there being still restrictions on what can be said on radio is very antiquated.
Oh, yeah.
So like we can't curse on our radio show by and large. There's like 8 words you can't say without it being like a huge
community
hubbub.
Standard FEC violation.
And I think
FCC violation.
That standard made sense in 1950.
Yeah.
I think nowadays people are choosing you don't accidentally end up on our radio show, right?
Right.
And so I think the audience is able to handle cursing a little bit.
But I will say,
Don't you
I've gotten
some level of the regulation? Like to me, even on YouTube, I really try
here's
not
my
to
thing.
curse. But every now and again, I
So
show
here's my thing. I'll say this.
Like,
people know, like we both, you know us, you hang out with us socially, we curse in our private lives. I don't pretend to like wag a finger at people about that. But we do, I mean, we have 10-year-olds that listen to our radio show, right? And so that's where, like, the people who are like, oh, like you said, like, gosh darn, and they get upset at us, that's not really, but if someone's in the car and they got their 8-year-old and their 12-year-old, and we let an F-bomb or something fly, I would, you know what I mean? Like that's where I think it's.
What does radio have now? It's a 3-second delay still.
Oh, we have
like 20-something seconds.
Oh,
delay.
yeah.
I don't think. Am I wrong? I don't think we've ever said an inappropriate thing in 2
No, we've
years
never
on
had
the
to drop.
radio.
So you've never been bleeped once.
Oh, I used to when I did local sports radio in Nashville. It wasn't even just me. We would have callers come in and just go off, right? On which is great radio.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to hit the dump button.
Yeah.
And sometimes you forget or you punch the wrong button or whatever. So back in the day when I did local sports talk radio, I mean, there were people like, we definitely violated some FCC rules over like what could be said. But I've never, as a solo host, I don't believe I have ever cursed live on the radio.
So then does that seem weird to you guys at this point? So we can be sitting here, you obviously can say whatever you want, we have no delay, it is what it is. Now you have a 20-second delay, you're going to slightly, it's not just about cursing, right?
By the way, what we do is super weird, right? Like, so, especially radio, my wife will sometimes come up, Buck now has a home studio, I've got a home studio. There are people here working on your show. We can look at them. There's an audience of your talented staff, right?
Look at this guy, he's doing nothing.
When I sit in an empty studio in my house, I talk as if there are people watching. My wife will come up and make fun of me, like you move your hands, like you act as if. So it is an abnormal thing to sit in front of a microphone and talk for 3 hours with no one actually able to.
I tell everybody to do this, you have to be kind of weird.
1% of the time.
We're together, I'd say like a couple times a quarter. I mean, rarely.
Wow.
It's all because we all do it via
screen. For you guys right now.
Yeah.
Well, but it's not much different, right? Because we have the FaceTime set up, so I'm looking at him. We can see both back and forth.
We stare into each other's eyes for 3 hours a day.
I talk to him more than I talk to my wife, or he talks to his wife.
Yeah,
I
sure.
just realized, even though we're all going out tonight, I know you're dipping out for dinner with the
boss.
You're going out with the Casa Dragones guy.
No, that was last night.
So there's boss of the whole corporation, and then our immediate
bosses.
Oh, because
we got multiple
the Casa
bosses.
Dragones guy. I got to meet this guy.
Not everyone's Dave Rubin just calling all the shots for himself. You know what I mean? Some of us got to answer to. Yeah,
the chances I fire myself very slim.
That was the benefit. I mean, you asked the question earlier about, and I said this the other day, because we talked to a lot of people in their 20s and 30s, and they're like, "Hey, how do you move into media?" And I bet you would agree with this. I would have been far more nervous, being 100% honest, if I didn't own Outkick.
Oh, yeah.
Because I knew that ultimately I controlled my own fate. And even if you're trying to be completely honest, in the back of your mind, if somebody else controls your job, it's hard to say exactly what you think.
The only time
I say what I look. For better or worse,
correct.
It's all coming out of my brain, and it is what it is.
The only place I've ever worked where they tried to control what I've said in any real way was CNN, which is unsurprising.
Which doesn't.
Where by the way, and the way they would do it, well, you say that, right?
Yeah.
CNN,
no, it shows how it's shifted.
Right, because it used to, I mean, people were like, you work at CNN. I'm like, yeah, I was there. Kaylee was there.
Yep.
Dana Lash worked at CNN. Like, you go down, like, there's all these people who are right-wing who used to be CNN contributors and would, you know, present a conservative point of view. In the Trump era, it just, the place changed. I mean, when I say, and I mean in 2016, it went from, and even like the producers, like people were kind of, you were like unclean, like you were a bad, if you came on air to say good things. So the funny thing is they actually tried to extend me, but I've told Clay it's because I used to do a lot of counterterrorism analysis for them because of CIA, CTC, you know, no big deal. and so they would have me do their you know, panels on terrorism, stuff like that. But I said I wasn't going to keep I had no job. And I was like, I'm not keeping this job. I just can't do this anymore. That was 2015, 2016. So my contract ended at the 2016 election. I was done. So when Trump won, it's like, do you want to stay here and see how this is? And the answer was no. But even just the institutionally, the whole place got more and more hostile. And I mean, I remember this. Like I grew up because, you know, you were like a moderate and you were like a communist who's come over in polite, which is exciting, you know.
Just happy
I'm
to be
still,
here.
you know what I mean? Yeah, it's, you know,
yeah.
welcome to the team. And I grew up and I was watching like Hannity and Combs, you know, I think definitely in college, I think in high school. And I
Combs always getting smacked around.
Yeah.
That was a good show, though. I liked that show. It was a good show. And actually, he was. But you know, you used to see, and you know, the site Mediaite. Only people at home.
Well, 10 years ago, it was fine. It was perfectly fine, and now it's left
wing. I know, but it used to be basically the best fights between talking heads on TV. So it was actually a really fun site because it was like, you know, people throw down. Where does that even happen anymore? What forum is there? Bill Maher show. They've got. You know, they've had you and me on. It's crazy.
They won't have me on.
They will.
Actually,
they will.
I have not been on. I've been on the podcast.
Oh,
and
okay.
they have promised me many, many times and canceled me many times, and I just don't want to push it.
I
Like
think
at this point, I would be like, I feel like I did what I had to do with Bill, and it would almost be ridiculous to have me on. Actually, I don't think I've even said this on air, but I went there a couple weeks ago because I was in LA for something else, and I went to the show. And for years, for literally 20 years, I've been trying to get on Politically Incorrect even before that. So I've been trying to sit down with this guy forever. I went, I'm backstage, and I've been backstage many times and met all the producers, EPs, blah, 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 and was always selling me. I was trying to sell myself, like, let me on. You know, Bill doesn't get the left. What's really happening? For the first time ever, I could not, I swear to you, I don't mean this patting myself on the back in any, I was just like, I don't give a shit. And all of the producers were coming up to me and being like, oh, we don't know what I've been on. And I was like, well,
I can tell you from single guy life back in the day. I mean, you were single, I think, for a long time too. But the moment you don't care is when they all they all start to care, right?
It was very
the moment
bizarre.
you're like, I don't know if I'm going to call you, like whatever. They're just like, what do you mean, you know? And
I swear to you, if I got a text as we were sitting here, like, you want to do it this Friday, I would view it in a way as more of a headache than anything else. Like I don't feel like I have anything to prove in that way anymore, and that's part of such a machine.
Right, but so my point
not
is
saying
just,
I wouldn't do it.
No, my point is just that there's really no forum left. I mean, think about it. If they were to take, you know, one of us, three of us, whatever, and put us there with some people who have, you know, the thing is, it has to be. It's almost like a boxing match. You have to have people of relatively equal weight, right? Like I was invited recently by somebody. They're like, oh, will you debate like some. Like, I don't know, some like TikTok influencer or something. This is a friend of mine. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to debate some guy I've never heard of before who has, you know. But there should be a place where we can get back to those 2010 era Mediaite Thunderdome throwdown debates. I mean, I remember Chris Hitchens, R.I.P. You know, throwing the middle finger up to the Bill Maher audience like this. There used to be this stuff, and dude, it's all gone
But the truth
now.
is, and I know this is easy for us to say, but this is a failure of the left, not of the right.
Yeah.
We all would have done it when I was still on the left and my show was starting to take off because I was complaining about the left from the left. I would have, you know, Ben Shapiro on, and Larry Elder and Prager and all these guys, and I would get hate only from the left. Why would you even sit down with them? But the people on the right would be like, Rubin, you seem like a bit of a nutbag, like a lefty nutbag, but it's nice you treat them with respect. We were in D.C. 2 weeks ago. I interviewed, I think, 16 Republicans. Every person we reached out to said yes, and then 3 couldn't do it. Mitch McConnell fell, so he couldn't do it. Rand Paul's assistant got stabbed in D.C., so he couldn't do it. And then there was the shooting in Tennessee, so Marsha Blackburn had to bail. We got everybody else. We reached out to, I think, 20 Democrats. No responses from 19. Rashida Tlaib at least said no. So that tells you it right there. I'm not known as a hardcore. People used to criticize.
Right, you're
me.
supposed to be. You're supposed to be the gateway drug. You're supposed to be the one that people can experiment with before they take the full red pill.
And the truth is, I would treat them with the same respect. If I sat down with AOC, I have said crazy things about AOC. I think she is a communist and a LARPer and a blah, blah, blah. But I would treat her with the same respect if I was sitting across from her. This is what I was saying.
I mean, you can, it's because people, I used to get this actually back in the CNN days. They'd say, like, why do you even go there? And by the way, the answer after a while was, well, now it's no longer worth me going there. But there was a time when you would actually be able to get some shots in. Like I crushed Alan Dershowitz in a gun debate once because he doesn't know anything about guns. Brilliant constitutional law professor, doesn't know a damn thing about firearms, right? I mean, you'd have these opportunities. I mean, you know, Van Jones and I debated BLM 1.0. Like, you have these chances. Now, the host would cheat and, like, you know, step on you and not the other person and all that sort of stuff. But I feel like one of the reasons why, you know, we're sitting here, we're just talking about how crazy they are all the time now, is that no one has to defend their ideas anymore. In any forum, anywhere, anytime. It's all just, you know, amen corner for the left, and honestly, a lot of it on the right as well. And I think that we're missing something. And I don't know how to bring it back.
I would love to, believe me, I would love to. I had Richard Dreyfuss on the show this week. We haven't aired it yet, but Richard Dreyfuss, so actor, not known for politics particularly, but he wrote a book about civics, and for an hour, that's all he talked to me about. He just wants to find a place that you can have these debates. And I was like, listen, that's really what I set out to do and what I would still do. But we have one side that simply will not do it. The thing is, they're winning despite not doing it.
Yeah.
And the reason, when real time, when you're wondering why the guests are so shitty, it's like he knows if he puts good conservatives on or good libertarian, or whatever the hell we all are, if he puts any of us on, we will do it well. Do you remember when Dennis Prager was on there like 2 years ago? And it was shocking that they put him on at all. And Dennis started talking about transgender stuff, and they're mocking him and making fun of him. And everything Dennis said turned out to be true. But there's no, so instead they get
the marketplace of ideas doesn't exist anymore. That's the biggest challenge, right? Is people speak because I think about this all the time. Because in my mind, and I'm always trying to persuade people who are persuadable. Like in my mind, I'm like, for our show, I want there to be a massacre in 2024. Because I think the only
what's worse than a massacre? Like a full-on.
I think the only way Democrats get sane is if identity politics and cancel culture get obliterated.
Well, the other thing, I mean, I think that's true. One thing that I underestimated in all of this, and it's partly what I saw with COVID and also what you're seeing in some of these cities, is that because of the ideological ossification, right, because of that hardening that's occurred where no one's exposed to these other ideas, what we would think would be corrective pain doesn't actually result in, Chicago is a perfect example of this, doesn't actually result in, because they're like, no, this is part of the process. And you start to see it's almost a early Soviet Bolshevik level thinking of, all right, like there's going to be famine, but on the other side of famine is going to be the utopia and the promised land.
So they believe it basically proves them right.
Yes.
Because it proves that the system doesn't work.
Correct.
Yes.
And so in places like San Francisco, for example, people say like, well, hold on. People are fleeing. There's trash everywhere. There's open air drug use. There's more overdoses than ever before. All the metrics show it's getting worse. But they're just thinking, well, this just shows how broken and racist and oppressive the system actually is. So we need an even more radical solution over the long term and double down on this in the short term. Now, I do think that breaks at some point, like they start to lose more people. I'm just saying that their threshold for that pain point is way more than I had anticipated, certainly in New York.
Trump winning in 20 would have forced a realization and reflection on the left. Then COVID happened, and they managed to drag Biden across the finish line. I mean, look, just think about it I've got this book coming out in August. Democrats have won 7 of the last 8 elections in the popular vote. The team that is dominating doesn't change their tactics, right? Until you get your ass kicked. And that is what we are waiting for. And frankly, the entire 21st century, the only election everybody acknowledges is Obama won in 2008.
And doesn't that feel like a freaking lifetime ago?
Well,
remember Hope and Change? Doesn't that seem like it doesn't even seem like this country. And it doesn't even seem like this
Obama could
planet.
never be the nominee with 2008 as his campaign slogan now for Democrats.
He was against gay marriage.
Correct.
Bigot.
I mean, yeah, 100. I mean, in all honesty.
Racist.
There's a lot of Obama 2008 that would be a Republican campaign now.
Yeah.
You know, the whole premise of his campaign was Reagan 80. Buck knows I love this. Reagan 80 and Clinton 92, which is America's so amazing that I could be the president of the United States.
It did used to be the case that even the notion of flag waving, and there have been articles written in the New York Times about this more recently, how it has changed. But Democrats, and I mean literally flag waving, right? Like not in the figurative sense, that flag waving was something both sides did, and it was who represents America better, who has a better vision,
who loves the country more.
Who loves the country more. And now, from the left, flag waving is scary, unless it's the trans flag or the UN flag or the American flag. This was a thing during COVID. You may have even seen this. The New York Times wrote about it.
In Long Island.
In Long Island, people see like too many American flags, like, oh, that's scary to me. And it just goes to show the psychology of this and how much it's changed. And the other part of it is, it's amazing to me to see how they will say that our side has become the radical side when all of the positions of the Democrat Party that felt like they were on the slippery slope 10 years ago have just been rocketing down that slope without question. And they haven't moderated on anything.
And a guy with my bio could be fully welcomed by the Republicans. I am married to a dude. I have children. I am pro-choice. Rudy's pro-choice. Nobody thinks he's not a conservative, right? Like, it's just so obvious to me that there is one side that talks about tolerance and one side that actually exists with intolerance.
So you mentioned, by the way, DeSantis, Trump. We haven't even talked about it. So did you? We were watching.
I think this is the chance.
We were watching during the show today. You may have seen it. Like it actually was airing on television. This pudding,
I saw this
pudding ad.
The pudding ad.
Have you seen it?
So I did see it. I wish we could throw to it right now, but I saw it. It's a Trump super PAC put out the stupidest, pandering, low budget bullshit.
So when do you think DeSantis announces? And when do we actually get the beginning of a real fight? Because what we talk about on our show is, first of all, we don't think we're in a position because the legacy of Rush and the audience that we are fortunate to have on the radio show, we don't get involved in Republican primaries.
Do you know how?
Right?
Do you know how early?
This is important. You do though.
We do and we don't
talk about it every day. But I'm not going to say like, hey,
we don't endorse
a
Republican.
Supporting this.
Do you know how early in the 2016 Rush endorsed Donald Trump? Really important for people to know this. It was.
I would have thought it was late, actually.
Never. As in, he waited until Trump, so it was a trick question. Well done there, by the way. Yeah, Rush never endorsed Trump. He talked about Trump, supportive of Trump, but, gave a fair shake to talking about Ted Cruz and Rubio and everybody else, assessing it and really approaching it like we do as balls and strikes or, the coach of the team or whatever you want to say. And this demand that people seem to have in the media right now of some other people to come in at this. Can we at least see what the campaigns look like before we're supposed to make a decision?
Actually debating.
What's the point
that's
of a
also
primary?
Why politics. It's funny because your ability to use sports sort of metaphors to explain politics is incredible. But also, the more politics become like sports, the more dangerous it is in a certain sense.
It's very nice. He's very proud of me when I'm like, Clay, on this one we're gonna have to drop back and punt because we don't want to get a 2-point conversion or something.
Reference.
Well, I mean, you know what I mean? He's like, well done, Padawan.
So wait, I'll answer your question.
Yeah.
The legislative session in Florida closes I think at the end of May, and they have to change something related to him.
We've talked about this, yes.
So there's a technical reason that he can't announce at this point. I genuinely mean this. I suppose it is possible at some degree that maybe he has not fully made the decision. That's not my gut feeling. My gut feeling is
until it's made, it's not made, right? Like we all assume, but until it happens, this is what we say, by the way, about Biden, and we don't mean this, and this is one of these things, like Media Matters going to get this one day, but who cares? I mean, if you don't have a Media Matters vertical of hate toward you, right? Exactly.
They used to lie about me, and that pissed me off. Now they just repeat what I say,
and
I'm like,
that's right. That's accurate.
But everything that we're saying about 2024 and the landscape of American politics, Joe Biden's 80 years old. We talk about this. When you're 80 years old,
it's nuts.
When you're 80, I was saying this. Like I remember, spending time with. I had a grandfather in New York City that I was pretty close to, and spending time with him at 80. And like 80 is 80.
My grandfathers died at 81 and 84.
So point being here, if Joe Biden was truly between now and the election by natural causes, health, just let's say clearly incapacitated in some way, it changes everything, right? So all this projections about the matchup and everything else. So this notion that we're supposed to set in stone right now what 2024 on our side, even on the Republican side, is supposed to look like, to me, it's just this is a process for a reason that has to play out. I mean, what are the foreign policies? What are the projections of the top candidates? I do think it's funny, and we got to be honest about this one. It does seem like all the Republicans running so far but DeSantis obviously isn't in. The other ones, they're running for positions in a Trump cabinet. Like, there's no actual interest in.
We were talking about that today.
I mean,
DeSantis is getting attacked more as the second
Vivek is a nice guy, but
place
but this
than
is
Trump
not
is as the first place.
He's not running for president.
Right, so
it's very obvious.
Right. So there's a couple things here. So first off, right. So on the Vivek thing, I like him personally.
I like him too.
I did the
don't
first podcast with him, like. But yes, the attacks are going in, like, they're just not making.
It's too obvious.
It's too obvious. It's like, dude, like a little bit of
If your
trickery here,
goal is to be the president, then you have to beat the favorite.
Yes.
And it seems like every single person who is in the race so far is all focused on attacking
They're all
DeSantis.
trying to be in the
so
two
maybe
spot.
DeSantis is the favorite. That's what I think at this point. I think actually the polls are not making any sense. I'm telling you, I did a gig in Green Bay, Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin, about 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
I polled the audience. Now, obviously they're there to see me, so there's a certain something. But I polled the audience. I said, how many of you, it was about 300 people, how many of you voted for Trump last time? Literally every single person raised their hand. I said, how many of you would prefer DeSantis? I would say it was about 95%. There were maybe 10 people that didn't raise their hand. And then we talked about why. And basically everyone, and I did it fully as a backwards Q&A, like I really was questioning them and letting them talk. Everybody was basically like, it's just enough. This is the best guy that we have now. He's younger. There's no mean tweets. It's functional. Florida's functioning. This is the best guy we can put out. We thank Trump. Like, there was no anger towards Trump. And that's why the Trump guys online, the Trump influencer types, are doing him such a disservice by being so
It's funny
because
some of them attack us on our show for not being like pro-Trump enough.
And we all voted for Trump, right?
Yeah.
Twice? Yeah,
and I gladly voted for him, and I like him.
I like him
if
too.
he ends up as president and DeSantis is still my governor, that'll be great. But it doesn't mean he's the best
But the
choice
thing
yet.
for us that's funny is that we have people that are also complaining to us from the audience that we're too pro-Trump.
Right.
So we sit here and we're just like, okay.
So the sports analogy that makes sense, and this comes from doing sports, is when you talk about Auburn or Alabama or
SEC
Michigan,
football
Ohio
teams.
State.
I can do this.
The other side always rips you because it is such a passionate situation. And that's the reality now. And what I just keep coming back to is the single biggest vulnerability of Joe Biden, by far, is his age.
Yeah.
And whatever you can do to focus on Biden being 82 in 2024, I think that is the killer app, the killer argument.
The problem is you have
to
make an argument now to the base that you can't really think of who your dreamiest dream candidate is right now. You really, if you want to win, and the one thing I will say about Democrats that I really do have a begrudging respect for is their sheer ruthlessness at whatever works. Like whatever
Fetterman,
will get it
the
done.
perfect example of that.
They take a Stalin-esque approach to winning here in America, which is just like, however I'm going to stay in power is what I'm going to do. And if you're looking at it from the perspective of independents and persuadable voters, that notion of somebody who's clearly visual, it also gets into what are these people going to make their final determination on? These aren't people that are following politics generally. If you're an independent, people might argue with this, but I think you're kind of, open to things, and maybe you're going to just go with, the last few weeks before the election, like, this guy looks good, like, I'm going to give him a shot.
Yeah.
And the optics of it, I think, are very clear with then he'll be, 82?
Yeah.
Versus a guy who is clearly in his prime and also has really put points on the board. And let's remember, Joe Biden, the only points Joe Biden ever put on the board are getting reelected for 40 years to basically be a shill for the credit card companies in Delaware. Like, this guy is a joke who stood for nothing his whole life. So there was nothing ever impressive about him. It was just the juxtaposition with Trump.
Obama himself said that.
Right. True, right? And people always forget, like, why wasn't Biden the candidate in 2016 after 8 years as the VP? Because even the Democrats knew this guy was a schmuck.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm just saying.
Did you want credit from me from that?
No, schmuck, I'm saying. That sounds like, it's close to a curse is what I'm saying. I'm saying, I'm letting it rip a little bit here. I said schmuck.
Look, I would put it this way. The simplest way to do it is that what is DeSantis' biggest? Let's assume DeSantis is not a globalist rhino, right? So that's what the Trump people are throwing at him. He's it's just nonsense.
That's just not going to work.
It's just nonsense and it doesn't work. So let's just put that aside for a second. What would his biggest downside be? This is what I asked Patrick Bet David, PBD, and Rudy there. Rudy actually didn't have much as he's a Trump guy. He really didn't. His thing kept being Trump did it once and he can do it again.
Yeah.
So let's just put that somewhere.
Yeah, he's forgetting the second time.
PBD, and he likes DeSantis a lot. His biggest one was that the book didn't do as well as he thought, but it was #1 on New York Times. Basically saying he still has a PR issue.
So can
which I don't buy. But the point is, what's
the weakness?
Yeah.
So I think the weakness is purely aesthetic and subjective versus policy. I don't think it's policy based. I think it's just not possible to hit him on policy. I think the way you could go after him is that he's Scott Walker, meaning great at that. I'm not. By the way, I'm not saying I agree with this, but I'm saying the way you could sort of attack DeSantis and I think not have it be when they say he's not good on COVID. I mean, the two of us, you were living in the free state of Tennessee, right?
Yeah.
The two of us are sitting here going, we literally moved here. We uprooted our lives because he was so good on COVID, because we saw what was happening here. So that's just, it's actually insulting. It's insulting the intelligence of Trump voters when he says DeSantis was bad on COVID, because that's just crazy talk. Okay. But Scott Walker was a really solid governor, popular at the time, obviously purple state, difficult, good with the teachers union stuff, dealing with this. And then he ran for president, and just for whatever reason on the national stage, it just sort of went like, it just sort of collapsed of its own weight and didn't have that national level sizzle. Do I think that's likely to happen with DeSantis? No. But do I think it's fair to say that maybe he's not yet ready for that big stage and the theatrics of it and the retail politics and everything else? Fine. On the policy ground, I have no answer, by the way.
In some way, that actually makes me more for him. The idea that maybe he isn't the most perfected, and I actually don't take this argument, but like to just kind of give the devil his due, that he maybe isn't, Trump is better on TV, sure. Like, do I think if it was now Trump and DeSantis on the debate stage at the end, they get rid of everybody else, is Trump a better debater? Will Trump have more zingers? I mean, I was at the debate that DeSantis did with Charlie Crist. He's not the best debater.
Yeah.
There was a moment, actually, where Charlie Crist says to him, you won't even commit to not running for president, will you, DeSantis? And DeSantis won't answer. Now, the reason he wouldn't answer was because they had agreed in writing beforehand, you will not question the other candidate. So DeSantis was trying to be honest. He was trying to abide by the rules that they set. Now, Trump would have never abided by the rules, right? And Trump would have turned back at him and had a great zinger, and Charlie Crist was horrible at every level. But the point is, that may not be his strength. And if at the end, if we're just looking for a television star, I know that's not what you're asking for, but at the end, if that's really just what we want, then we will get Trump again as the nominee, but he will not be president.
My fear, if I were assessing DeSantis, would be a couple of things. One, he can be too scripted, and that kind of ties in with your analysis. And he doesn't seem normal. And if I were,
wait, what do you mean by that?
I mean, like, he is very good at getting his points and delivering them, but he doesn't seem really comfortable.
He's not guy at the bar, average Joe, like slap you on the back.
I don't mind that. I'm not actually not saying you're wrong. I don't mind it.
I'm just saying, what is Trump best at? I think Trump gets almost no credit for being able, he's a billionaire. He can walk into a McDonald's in middle of nowhere America and be totally normal, totally chill.
He's a Queens guy.
Connect with people.
I kept saying, for years, how is it that this orange man, billionaire with this crazy hair is more authentic than every single Democrat? Yes. And the truth is, like, think about it. Who's more authentic, Donald Trump or Elizabeth Warren? Who's more authentic?
No doubt.
Donald Trump or Joe Biden or Pete Buttigieg?
He's more authentic because he's more authentic.
And I think he's incredibly comfortable in his own skin, and I think that translates. And so I also think that if I were like sketching out the Trump, so let me tell you also the DeSantis attack. The DeSantis attack should be, you lost to Joe Biden, and you will lose to him again, and Biden is the worst president in any of our lives. Like, that is the appeal, right?
But he may turn off some Trump voters with that, because there are Trump voters that
I actually think it should be something else. I think it should be, look what I set out to do in Florida, look what I've done, look at the 1,200 people that move here a day, 1 million in 3 years, nobody's leaving, highest ever.
I get a guest house, by the way, because real estate here very expensive in Florida, Rubin. You know what I mean?
I got a gym that you could maybe.
Thank you.
I think it's going to get nasty, and that pudding ad that we were talking about when we started is so ridiculous that I think that both of these guys are going to get rolling around down in the muck. And I don't
know that DeSantis will do it.
I don't think he'll do it either. And I'll tell you this.
You can't beat Trump that way.
I think, he's not going to do it because that's playing Trump's game.
And he shouldn't do it. Yeah.
But I'll also say, I think that when they go dirty on DeSantis, and there's been some dirty stuff. I don't mean the globalist rhino stuff is laughable.
The groomer stuff is pretty aggressive.
The groomer, that's dirty. Like that has no place.
Trump. I'm not hitting Trump. I keep saying Trump. Make the case for Trump.
I think Trump should be above DeSantis and say, like, this is what we talked about on our show. I'm not even going to feud with any other Republican now. Especially, he had an opportunity after he got indicted to just come out and say, it's me versus Biden. I'm not going to say a single negative word against anybody else that I'm running against.
Who did he spend the week attacking?
I know.
So who's the real? That's what I'm telling you. I think the polls, something's wrong with the polls. There's only one guy being attacked right now by MSNBC and by Trump, and it's DeSantis. Nobody's attacking Trump.
This is the only time I can think of where Trump and Trump people all of a sudden entirely believe polls, which is interesting, isn't it?
Oh, that's
interesting. The polls always where the polls lie. Whenever the polls are negative, the polls lie. Right now, vis-a-vis DeSantis, we're told, guys, it's all over before it even started. Really? Because it's just based on polls against a candidate who's not even a candidate yet, not officially announced, and
That's interesting. Let me ask you guys something else on this, and then they are giving us the signal, and then you guys have to have your fancy dinner.
I was going to say, can we mooch off your YouTube following though and tell people we have a Clay and Buck YouTube for our radio show?
Are you guys on the computer?
We're on the interwebs, and we would like the smart Dave Rubin people to subscribe to our show over there. God, it's like my first day on TV.
Look at this guy.
Subscribe to Clay Travis and Buck Sexton show on YouTube, please. We do fun things over there, and we'll have Dave back on now too. So yay.
Does he get paid more to do that?
He's doing a great job. Usually, like I have to be shameless in promotion. I think he's learned some of the shamelessness.
Clay is a world-class promoter, and I love that we'll even be like, oh man, like this story out of Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City, another one of the 15 markets where we are number one in the country. We just want to say thank you to everybody in Salt Lake City for making us number one of all radio shows in the nation. And then goes right in the story. Dude, he does it. He's like the Terminator. It's like programmed into his brain.
When you run your own media business, you have to be so shameless to make people aware that you exist.
You got to do what you got to do.
Because otherwise, nobody will know. And so now we have a big, we're in 500 stations or whatever, and I can't turn off the, hey, let me promote. We have a PR guy now at Outkick.
Yeah.
And, I'm totally blown away by the fact that we have a guy whose full-time job is to try to get attention, because when you're starting literally at zero, you've got to do everything you can to make people aware that you exist. So he's picked up on the shamelessness that required.
Gotta just go.
How do you feel about that? I mean, spiritually.
As long as we add to those that station list we have, I'm good with it, man. Whatever we got to do to get it done.
I was just reminded of something, that when Clay has a couple of drinks, he does the slow blink. You do the slow blink.
Oh, really? Starts to slow down a little bit?
Yeah, I do the slow blink too, but I can tell you'll be able to drive because you're...
No, I'm ready. I'm actually going to get a haircut, and I'm thinking about having him do a straight shave right now,
too. Wow. This could be the last media appearance with a beard.
You know why I love Donald Trump? Every time I see him, he goes, Buck Sexton, best hair in television. I was going to be like, I'm actually in radio, but I'll take it. I love the guy.
Now you guys are kind of have dinner with the big boss man over there, and then the whole Florida crew is having dinner.
Florida squad's getting a drink.
Now there are going to be pictures taken, and then the crazy people of the internet are going to take these pictures, and they're going to say that we're coordinating things, we're working against certain people, working for people, but we're just secret.
We actually were just hanging out, but we should put hashtag Illuminati, hashtag Bilderberg, hashtag DeSantis Secret Squad.
Well, again, this is the world that exists now, because 2022 everybody's on the same team. Didn't go the way we wanted.
Yeah.
Right. Let's be fair. For most races that were close. 2023 is the Alabama, Auburn, Michigan, Ohio State, Yankees, Red Sox. And then 2024, everybody will come back together and sing Kumbaya, and unless Trump decides to run as an independent, then everything would fall apart. But look, I mean, I think it's going to get really nasty throughout much of 23. And I don't think there's anything wrong. But you guys are like, I don't think you should roll out of the mud. I don't think there's anything wrong with things getting nasty, because I think ultimately what it does is Biden's not running against anybody, right? He's already an awful candidate. If they allow him to be on the stage with whoever emerges from the Republican primary.
Well, I hate to tell you, he could, he could drop dead, or they could just kick him out. I mean, they're doing something with Gavin. Clearly, they are doing. There's something.
He's waiting in the wings, I think, for emergency.
Right. I don't even know.
Which is what the vice president's supposed to be.
Right, but I don't even know technically how you do it. But it is clear that that thing is in motion. Where if Biden goes down or literally cannot speak or whatever it is, they're going to figure out.
You know,
a way for
we
it to
were
be
talking
Gavin
today.
and not Kamala.
I think that they will, especially if Trump is the nominee. I think that they will say that they can't platform Trump, and that's the way they'll avoid Biden having to debate him. Because he's so toxic and such a threat.
Oh, because he's a
felon.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to say.
And the other question that I have that's out there floating around is, to what extent, as this Biden ridiculousness continues to roll, to what extent might they, behind the scenes, start spending money to help Trump and attack DeSantis, like they did in 22 with, they claim that Trump is this existential threat, but then everybody who supported Trump, they helped to boost him up by spending money.
Who does MSNBC want? The guy that will get them views that cannot win, or the guy that will ignore them and win? Right, and that's DeSantis.
It's very clear.
That really is what this all boils down to. Otherwise, they all said for 4 years. How many people do you know that said, Trump, it's like, I like the policies and things are working, but I don't like the mean tweets and the attitude. Congratulations, you got DeSantis. I think he's 45 years old or 46 years old, 3 young kids, a good father, a good.
He's everything the conservative movement says and has said for the 41 years of my life they want. That is where we are. Just putting that out there.
I've enjoyed drinking tequila with you fine fellas.
Cheers.
This is actually pretty good, by the way. This isn't some backdoor swill we got here.
I had never
this
seen this bottle before, and I just went to the store on the way here. This was, who was it? Kevin Hart. This is Kevin Hart's tequila.
That's cool. Good for
Congrats
him.
to Mr. Hart.
I wish he had been able to host the Oscars, because he made a joke, 15 years ago. People were upset about that.
No, he should be banned from human society. And guys, the evening's going to continue.
But we'll see you guys later.
Camera.
I'm actually going to drink then. So
goodbye to you, fine people. And I'm sorry. Now, what's the show and what are your names again? Just real quick. Your
Clay Travis, Buck Sexton show. We're on YouTube as well. We're on Rumble. Basically, if the platform exists, you should be able to find us somewhere in that vicinity.
And they'll be somewhere in Miami Beach this evening.
That's right.
This shirt's not going to be able to
hide. Communication.